Today the notes are over quadratic proportions, and we're going to start with x plus 4 divided by 3, or over 3, equals negative 3 over x minus 2. And remember, whenever we have a fraction equal to a fraction, that's when we're going to draw the butterfly and cross multiply. That means the opposite two corners are multiplied together, and then the other two opposite corners are multiplied together. And remember, when it's more than just one number or letter, you need to put parentheses around it. So what this is going to show is that we'll multiply the x plus 4 together in parentheses times the opposite corner, so that's the x minus 2, but that needs to go also in parentheses. And you set that equal to the other two opposite corners, so the 3 and the negative 3. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And then start solving, because our whole goal is to solve for x. So if we see parentheses times parentheses, that means FOIL. So x times x is x squared. X times negative 2 is negative 2x. Then our inside of FOIL is 4 times x, so it's plus 4x. And then 4 times negative 2 is minus 8, and it's still equal to negative 9. Then anytime you're going to be working with quadratics, I would recommend normally either factoring or quadratic formula, depending on whether it can factor or not. So I would always set it equal to 0. If you want to use completing the square, that's fine. Just make sure your a value is 1 and your b value is an even number. You can use square roots, just make sure there's no b value. And I wouldn't really recommend graphing it, but it's up to you. There's those 5 methods. So we're going to get it set equal to 0, so x squared. Combine like terms to get plus 2x. We're going to add the 9 over to get plus 1 and then equals 0. Then we can go on to try to factor this. Factors of 1, which is 1 and 1, that add, because the signs are the same, they're both going to be plus, so x plus x plus. Factors of 1 that add to be 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. So we have that, and then you set both of these equal to 0, but since they're the same, you only have to do it once. So x plus 1 equals 0, x plus 1 equals 0, but again, you'd get the same number. Subtract the 1, and we have x equals negative 1. Okay, number 2. We're just going to practice a few of these, and then you can work on homework. 2x minus 1 on top and 7 in the denominator equals 1 divided by the quantity of x minus 3. And you're going to do the exact same thing. A fraction is equal to a fraction, so you're going to draw a butterfly and cross multiply, depending who you had last semester. So we're going to multiply the opposite two corners together, so the 2x minus 1, make sure to put parentheses around it, multiplied by the x minus 3, put parentheses, equal to the 1 times 7. Which will be 7. And again, we'll need to FOIL. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 3 is minus 6x. The inside, negative 1 times x is minus 1x. And negative times a negative will be a positive 3, still equal to 7. Again, I would set it equal to 0. So 2x squared, combine like terms. Minus 7x, subtract the 7 to be minus 4, equals 0. And remember to factor when the a value is not 1. You're going to have to use the guess and check method. Factors of 4 are 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. Factors of 2 are your a values 1 and 2. Since the 2 is with the x squared, the 1 and the 2 are going to go next to the x when it's split up, so that when you FOIL this, 2x times x, you get 2x squared. Signs are different. We don't know which is which, so let's just make one positive and one negative. We can switch it very easily if it ends up needing to be the other way. And then you can try 2 and 2 here. You can try 1 and 4, 4 and 1. There's those 3 combinations. Since the a value is not also a perfect square like the c value is, I'm going to try the 1 and the 4 first instead of the numbers closest together, just because I noticed they're not both perfect squares. Let's just try 1 first and then a 4. Then we check it by doing inside times inside, which is 1x, outside times outside, which is minus 8x, and we get negative 7x, which was our b value, so that is what we wanted. Good. Had this happened to be a positive 7x and we wanted a negative 7x, all you'd have to do is flip the plus and the minus sign and then you would be good. But don't stop here. You are not done because we haven't solved for the x values yet. So that's when you go, oh, up here, two things being multiplied together set equal to 0. One of these better equal 0. So we have either the 2x plus 1 equals 0 or the x minus 4 equals 0, and we want to solve both of those for x. Subtract the 1 to get 2x equals negative 1, divide by 2, and x will equal negative 1/2. Or if we add the 4 to the other equation, we'll get x equals 4. So we have two answers. Good. Number 3. We have the quantity of 2x plus 4 on top divided by the quantity of x minus 3 equals the 3x's on top divided by the quantity of x minus 3. And again, a fraction is equal to a fraction. These are called proportions, so we're going to draw our butterfly or cross multiply. And we're going to multiply the opposite corners together. So we get 2x plus 4 in parentheses times the x minus 3. Set equal to our 3x times the x minus 3. Just because this only has one term rather than two different terms, it's a monomial rather than a binomial. I'm going to put the monomial first, but do you have to? No. You'll end up having to distribute, and normally we distribute from the front, but you can do it from the back as well. It doesn't matter. And could you switch these two sides and do 3x times the quantity of x minus 3 equal to all this? Yes, that doesn't matter as long as they're set equal to each other. Okay, now let's FOIL. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 3 is minus 6x. 4 times x is plus 4x. And 4 times negative 3 is minus 12. Set that equal to when we distribute. 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times negative 3 is minus 9x. And now we're going to set everything equal to 0, but what I would recommend is make sure your a value is always positive in case you end up factoring. Can you use quadratic formula every time? Yeah, that's fine. You don't have to worry about a positive a value for that, although you can. But I would set it equal to 0 every time and make your a value positive, which means we're moving all this stuff over there. So I'll be subtracting the 2x squared. And this, when combined, this will become negative 2x. So I would add the 2x to the other side. And then add the 12. So that we're going to end up getting 0 equals x squared minus 7x plus the 12. Pause at any time to look at those numbers. Let's see if it's factorable. Factors of 12, 1 and 12, 2, 6, 3, and 4. Signs should be the same because of the positive c value. They should both be negative because of the b value. So x minus and x minus. I'm trying to figure out if any of them subtract to be negative 7. Well, the negative 3 minus 4 does. So we put a 3 and a 4 there. So it does factor nicely. And then we're going to see how there's two things that are multiplied together equal to 0. So one of them better equal 0. That's why we're going to set it up x minus 3 equals 0 or x minus 4 equals 0. Add the 3 and we get x equals positive 3. Or we add the 4 and get x equals positive 4. And we have two answers. Okay, last one we're going to go through in notes. Number 4. We have the quantity of x plus 5 divided by the quantity of negative 8x squared plus 1 equals 1 over the quantity of x minus 2. Again, we still have a fraction equal to a fraction, so we're going to draw a butterfly or cross multiply. And we're going to multiply the opposite two corners together, and make sure to put stuff in parentheses. So x plus 5 times our x minus 2 equals, well, anything times 1, it's just itself, so this will actually equal negative 8x squared plus 1 still. If you want to put the 1 out in front with the parentheses around this, that's fine, but it's unnecessary. And then we'll FOIL, so we'll have x squared minus 2x plus 5x minus 10 equals negative 8x squared plus 1. And again, we want to set the x value, or the a value equal, make it positive, but set the equation equal to 0, excuse me. So to make the a value positive, we're going to add the 8x over here, the 8x squared, and we'll subtract the 1. So we'll get 9x squared plus 3x when we combine like terms minus 11 equals 0. And you can try to factor this, but let me just tell you it's not going to. Just to give you a tip for something that you'll be able to use in Algebra 2 more, you can always see whether it factors by trying the discriminant. Remember the b squared minus 4ac. We would know right away that this doesn't factor if we did this, because 3 squared minus 4 times a times our c, it'd be 9, and a negative times a negative will be a positive. 4 times 9 times 11 is going to be 396, and if we add 9 to that, we're going to get 405. Because this is not a perfect square, that means it does not factor. So we know right away we cannot factor. If you don't understand this part, that's fine, but I just thought that you might find it helpful so you're not trying to factor something that can't be. So this is just a little extra. Now this, we can always use the quadratic formula, and it's plenty big numbers, 9 and 11, yeah, I mean they're not huge, but then we can do our negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Whoops, I forgot to fill in the numbers at the end. Sorry, it's early this morning. Not for you guys, but it is for me. So our a value is 9, and our c value is negative 11 over 2 times our 9. And then we can still start calculating negative 3 plus or minus the square root of, but notice, only because I did this inside part already, the discriminant, I know this is going to be 405. But most of the time you'll need to show steps there. Divided by the 18. Remember, it's all divided by the 18. And let's do simplest radical form, because that seems to be what we need practice on. We've been doing word problems with quadratic formula, and you've been practicing decimal, but let's do simplest radical form, which means we're going to have to do a factor tree. So let's try 5 and 81. 81 can break down to 9 and 9, and the 9s can be 3s and 3s. So if we circle the pairs, a 3 comes out and a 3 comes out. Multiply those numbers together, and we're going to get 9 on the outside. But the negative 3, the plus and the minus, and the divide by 18 doesn't change. It's just our 9's on the outside, and the poor 5 that doesn't have a date is left in the square root. But remember, if all 3 of the numbers, not just 2 of them, some people did that on the quiz, not just 2 of them, but all 3 of these numbers, if they're divisible by the same thing, we can divide them all. So these are all divisible by 3. Divide them all, and we get negative 1. Yes, you still need the 1, because that'll be added or subtracted to our 9 square root of, whoops, not 9 anymore, sorry. 9 divided by 3 is 3. Square root of 5, and then 18 divided by 3 is 6. And this is going to be our simplest radical form answer. Feel free to watch different parts of the video, but if you feel confident, you're welcome to start your homework.